Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Byington, and in this video, we're talking about Jonathan Swift's poem, The Ladies' Dressing Room. A little background about this poem. This is a social commentary. One of the many ways you can look at it is as a social commentary on the extremes of vanity, the extremes through which people put themselves. Now, the speaker is telling us about a character named Strephon who uninvitedly goes into Celia's dressing room and sees this and is largely commenting on women's vanity, but the men were just as bad. It took them just as long to get ready in the 18th century because this is the time period of lots of big hair, especially wigs if you have the money, heavy white powder makeup. So much so that, and you don't have examples here. If you have Hulu, you could watch something like the show Harlots. You would see a lot of more like the aristocrats wearing like the really like heavy white lead-based makeup. And it would be fashionable to wear a beauty mark on yourself. Different placements meant different things, like if you were available or maybe only willing to flirt, things like that. People would wear that at parties. Um, and there's lots of, if you didn't powder, excuse me, if you didn't wear a wig, like that would make your hair look white, like this gentleman here in the middle, you might powder your hair instead. So there are different versions of that. Also, this gentleman in the middle, the curls, the tight curls, the Roman curls like that on the side were very popular. And you see some of that, I think, in like images of like colonial America. Um, and then in this portrait of King Charles II, that's another variation of the wig wearing, and he's got this like majestic brunette thing going on, big loose wavy curls. So that it wasn't always a very white or powdered wig. So just depended on what the person was into. Um, the Madame Grande over here on the left. So that's something late in the late 18th century. This is 1780s. Something that's almost like a mullet, or it's like an early bad prototype of bangs, just kind of like poofing up shorter hair, styling shorter hair there in the front. Um, the more extreme versions would be if you look at paintings with Marie Antoinette. She would wear very, very obscenely tall white wigs. So let's start looking at the poem and talk about some of the things in this. So in the very beginning, it says, "This is how long it takes Celia to get ready. 5 hours." And that's because of it's the garments, it's the makeup, it's the hair. So whatever, she's probably going to a social event, we can assume, and it's taking her this long to get ready because this dress and even the men's pieces, these are not like, one or two piece outfits. They had several layers. So to assemble all of that sometimes couldn't even be done by the person alone, especially the women's clothing. You have to have um, the your servants help you get dressed, and even to wear these immaculate wigs. The same with that. So it's already talking bad, talking down about Celia, taking 5 hours to get ready, arrayed in lace, brocades, and tissues. And then Strephon finds the room is empty. Betty, otherwise employed, you can interpret Betty as a servant. So he's going to sneak in and go look at all this. Now, something I always have to explain when I teach this poem is um, like, why in the world is he looking at all this gross stuff? Well, it's not like today where you grow up seeing commercials for or seeing these things like in Walgreens or Targets, the hygiene items of the opposite sex. So there isn't that much curiosity about to a guy about tampons and women's deodorant and stuff like that. It's kind of understood like, okay, we're all human, everybody sweats, people need to brush their teeth. Like we try to do things to make ourselves a little less gross. Um, but at this time, because you would have such this like separation of the opposite sexes, and maybe even between brothers and sisters growing up together, that people would just not understand like what this other person does for their personal hygiene matters. And so he sneaks in, he was not invited. He really should not be in here, but he's going to get what's coming to him in the end. So he goes in, he takes a strict survey of all the litter as it lay. And then we get an inventory of it all from the speaker. So there's a dirty smock. So think of like a top. There would be different variations of this. Is like an undershirt that belongs to Celia, and it has some pit stains on it. It says beneath the armpits, well besmeared. If you've ever worn a white shirt one too many times, this might have happened to you. And based on that alone, he's holding it up and like looking at it from every side, just like bewildered that she sweat. And it even goes on to say, Strephon bids us guess the rest, but can't believe that other men say Celia is sweet and cleanly because he's like, "Ah, she sweats. No, she's not." And then we have various combs for various uses. And you all, if you don't clean your combs and brushes, you really should. But it was a little worse back then because there wasn't daily or like I don't wash my hair every day. I think, a lot of us, especially women, use dry shampoo to stretch it out to like an every other day kind of thing or so. But in this case, maybe they're washing their hair like once a month. And so that powder they're using to lighten the hair to give it that white appearance, well, it also kind of works like a dry shampoo. So then the fact that it was pretty normal to not wash your hair very often. They're getting the fashion out of the powder, but then also some functionality. So it's got the sweat. If you get hot, like your hair sweats. That's why your hair looks oily if you don't wash it much. And then the dandruff from the buildup of not cleaning the scalp. And then the powder and the lead and hair is all built up in between the bristles of her combs and brushes. Um, he calls it a composition rare, as it's nasty. Something about the lead. Most of these products that were used for making the face and the hair look very white, they were lead based. It was even considered fashionable to have a little bit of like irritation around your eyes, some pinkness caused by that lead in the makeup you're wearing. And there are stories about people, men and women both, dying young from liver or kidney failure because they're constantly, because of their vanity, constantly wearing these lead-based products. So it poisoned their bodies and they died from it. Um, so we have then this really disgusting thing. If you are using the Norton Anthology, you've already read this footnote perhaps about poor little Tripsy. So it was fashionable to have a little lap dog. And it's not just because it's cute or for the companionship. Sure, those things might have been part of it. But if you have a little lap dog, it can help attract those fleas that are getting in your wig, your big high fashion wig that you're wearing. And so to have the lap dog makes sense. But then in this case, not unheard of, there are night gloves made of Tripsy's hide. She has Celia has leather gloves made from the hide of her deceased dog, Tripsy, as a keepsake. And then when Tripsy died, she has also been turned into a beauty ointment called puppy water. This is like one of those really awful, very stupid folklore, wives' tales, home remedy things, or people thought this was somehow going to make them younger. Maybe at its freshest, it could have worked because there is something that's, it looks gross, but it was really popular for a minute a few years ago, made popular by the Kardashians called the Vampire Facial, and I think a lot of places still even offer this service. So it's like microneedling on your face, but they also draw your own blood and then spin it in a machine that separates the plasma from the blood. So they're getting the plasma, the particular part of the blood that they want to put over the skin after the microneedling because it will make you look younger. It sounds absolutely disgusting, but some like a little bit of proof behind it, maybe. So same idea, perhaps with the puppy water. Maybe it worked when it was like freshly made, but it has been sitting on your vanity for a few months. That's disgusting. Okay, so hard by a filthy basin stands, fouled with the scouring of her hands. The basin takes whatever comes, the scrapings of her teeth and gums, a nasty compound of all hues, for here she spits and here she spews. This is like your bathroom sink or maybe your roommate's bathroom sink. If you don't want to admit it to you, if you let that dried toothpaste that gets on the sink sit there for a few days, or like guys shave and you get all those little facial hairs all over the sink, all of that just build up and the soap scum from the general washing of your hands, all of that. That's what we're looking at in the space. And remember, they don't have, this is the 18th century, it's not running water, so it's like a bowl that she washes herself in particular. Here we're talking about brushing the teeth and such. And then there's a bunch of dirty laundry around. Um, there are dirty towels from like drying herself off after she cleans with the water, the basin, the water in the basin. They are begummed, bemattered, and beslimed. And so, they don't have loofahs back then. The towel is picking up the dead skin, and then maybe she's like wiping her ears with it apparently because there's some earwax on this, and then there are some dirty handkerchiefs she's blown her nose with, and her stockings, these are some dirty socks, they have stains from her toes on them. And then there are tweezers for plucking her eyebrows and even her chin hairs, because he's not going to leave that detail out. And then there's a mirror. It calls it Celia's magnifying glass. He's imagining her popping zits on her face. And then, and if you notice, I have some brackets with ellipses here for editing out the length of this for the sake of keeping the video not too long. So just be aware of that. I want to point that out. Focusing on the climax of this poem here with Stupid Strephon. This is a question that I ask on exams sometimes. I ask, what is the cabinet with rings and hinges counterfeit? That's a few lines down from what I'm starting with on this page here. They are calling it a cabinet here. This is like a piece of furniture fashioned to look like an ordinary piece of furniture in the room, a cabinet with the rings and hinges counterfeit. But it's used to disguise the chamber pot. So if you've ever heard the expression of someone being so poor they don't have a pot to piss in, this is referring to that. The chamber pot was essentially the potty. That's where we get that term too. It's a toilet because there are no real toilets that you can flush and the scary stuff goes bye bye. You had to empty your own chamber pot. In this case, we were reading this as an upper class society. So, Celia's housekeeper hasn't dumped this chamber pot out. Usually it'd just be dumped out like once a day. And a lot of times people wouldn't throw it out the back window because they don't want it in their backyard, which they call a garden over there. They would just throw it out the front windows, and there would literally be feces and urine all over the streets. There's another Jonathan Swift poem about that and talking about like how disgusting the city of London was before these public health measures were put in place to say like you've got to stop doing this because it's obviously not sanitary. So her chamber pot has not been emptied because for Strephon ventured to look in this chamber pot, resolved to go through thick and thin. He lifts the lid. There needs no more. He smelled it all the time before. Like he knew. And this dumb guy looked in it anyways. And he says it's like opening Pandora's box, you know, all the evil comes out into the world. Because she had left something in there recently. Um, the vapors flew from out the vent. But Strephon, cautious, never meant to the bottom of the pan to grope and foul his hands in search of hope. So he's so startled, like by seeing a turd in the chamber pot, that he kind of like falls over himself and with his hands. So at least it wasn't his face or something, right? He lands hands first in the chamber pot in the feces. I mean, he shouldn't have been in there in the first place. And he's thinking, you know, there's this whole part where I have the omitted part there with the brackets and ellipses talking about like what people eat and digestion, and it's got to come out at some point. So things which must not be expressed when plumped into the reeking chest send up an excremental smell to taint the parts from whence they fell. He's saying like it had never crossed his mind that this beautiful woman, Celia, has bowel movements. And that probably sounds like really stupid and insane, but again, there would have been like just the not understanding about the bodily functions of the opposite sex. I mean, they especially would not have understood the menstrual cycle. For God's sake, most men still don't today. But um, he he goes on to say like he's repeating in his amorous fits, oh Celia, Celia, Celia shits, like he can't believe that she does. And this is also kind of a commentary on that part of medical science. They didn't like really understand fiber and stuff like that, so the understanding of digestion and having to go. um, and it's even worse for women's health. They didn't understand really how the reproductive system happened, especially things like postpartum disorder. We talk about that in another one of my classes with a short story called The Yellow Wallpaper. So his realization that like this beautiful woman has bowel movements just freaks him out. And curiosity killed the cat. So that's all I'm covering for this poem. Thank you for watching.